This time on the show, building a budget virtualization cluster. 16 cores under $1,000. Can it be done? Find out this time on Hak5.
Yeah, hook me up, I'm ready.
This episode of Hak5 is brought to you by GoToAssist Express. Support smarter with GoToAssist Express. Domain.com. Got a great idea? It all starts with a great domain. Domain.com. And Dead Space 2 in stores now.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen and this is your weekly dose of Technolist. We have a fantastic show for you guys this week because we're talking virtualization. We're going to do some fun, happy stuff when it comes to building clusters. We talked about a few weeks ago Proxmox, an open source virtualization environment. It's going to help you set up yourself a little KVM and OpenVZ action. And we're taking the little quad core box that we built a few weeks ago and adding some more to it. We're adding just a couple more members of the family. In fact, the challenge is to build 3 more nodes on the cluster for under $1,000. We'll see if we can do it. Little i5 goodness, and yeah, that should be a lot of fun. But first and foremost, all of this virtualization stuff that we've been doing has really tied in with a cool new project that we're having fun with called the Hak5 Hacker Challenge. We just had our first one last Saturday, and just a resounding, amazing amount of feedback coming from you guys. A lot of people joined in, participated in IRC, got into the virtual machines that we set up using GoToAssist Express, and had a lot of fun, throwing attacks against each other and doing some of that. So I thought I'd maybe do a little highlight and give you guys a little recap if you missed it, because basically what we set up was 64 virtual machines on the poor little quad core here, and that's actually why we're building some more hardware, because yeah, that's a little too much for this poor little guy. So but yeah, we had all of these XP Service Pack 2 machines unpatched, right? But armed to the teeth with that great tool that we talked about last week, Armitage, the front end for Metasploit, as well as all the other stuff that you would expect, like your Nmaps and Kane and Netcat and Wireshark and everything else, right? So so we let everybody in, and it was basically a free-for-all, okay? And this was a really fun soft launch, great first time to get in and see how people were going to experiment with it. We actually set up a dedicated line at a local ISP here so that it's on a completely separate network. About to upgrade that to probably about 50 megabits up and down, or well, we'll see what we can get, but I think we can get about 50 megabits, which will make things a hell of a lot faster. And also with the new hardware that we're building for the virtualization cluster, I'm going to take this idea, really run with it, because I got so much great response. I hope you guys can join in for the next one, because we're going to be adding a lot of different elements to the mix. We're going to be adding kind of a co-op element where if you're in the IRC chat room, you could coordinate with your fellow hackers rather than try to patch your machine while at the same time hack everyone else, right? And the idea of the last challenge was that each participant had a JPEG of a kitten on their desktop, a unique kitten just to them. And the object was to protect your kitten. You could not modify or delete the kitten photo. Sorry, couldn't touch that. But put up your firewalls, update, get your patches on, all that good stuff. Well, at the same time, trying to use remote exploits to break into the other computers and steal their kittens. So it's really not a capture the flag, more of a capture the kitten. And we're going to go with something like that with future ones, where we'll be adding some other servers specifically meant so that you can try out things like SSH brute forcing and some remote exploits and stuff like that we'll be talking about here in the future. We got Mubix coming on to talk to us about pivoting and enumeration and post-exploitation stuff. It should be awesome. And the idea is that we're going to set up a bunch of servers like Metasploitable, maybe an NT4 server. Who knows? We're going to have a lot of fun with this. And now that we have the hardware to do it, I think it's going to be so great. So I hope that you can all get in on this, because yeah, we're having a lot of fun. I'm even going to set up a live stream so the next time we can commentate on it. I was sitting there in my room with the 3 28-inch monitors with VMs everywhere, just watching people's desktops, and it's really interesting to see how people work. And it's just so amazing to see, one guy was actually installing Panda antivirus. I'm like, I don't know what that's going to do. And then another guy was ARP cache poisoning the entire network using Kane enable. And Actually, he wasn't the only one doing it, which was really fun to see. Like 2 hackers on a network, both trying to ARP cache the entire. Oh, it's just packet mayhem. Things were just like falling out of the sky. It was so much fun. So I hope you guys can join in with the next one. And yeah, that's just a little hacker challenge recap. And I want to thank Citrix because they were so great to sponsor this, and they're going to continue to with the the next coming sessions of the Hacker Challenge. And they've provided us with a great way that you guys can get in on the action using GoToAssist Express. So I want to take a moment to tell you guys about that. As you know, I provide technical support to a lot of people online, whether it's friends and family, whether if it's my coworkers back at a IT job on the East Coast. GoToAssist Express is one of the best ways to provide technical support online when you can't be in there in person. You can remotely control your computers, you can quickly resolve technical issues, and it's helped me to be able to just take care of my friends, my family, my coworkers, and we encourage you to go ahead and try it out for free. If you head over to gotoassist.com/hack5, you can get yourself a free 30-day trial. Again, for this special offer, visit gotoassist.com/hack5, and we want to thank Citrix for helping us out and sponsoring the show and helping you guys get in on this challenge. Good stuff, right? So, Proxmox. As you guys recall, the other week, for CES I think it was, we built our first virtualization node. And yeah, it's running all right. He is a quad-core Q9550, so the older style Intel quad-core, running at 2.8 gigahertz, got 8 gigs of RAM in him, and he was peaking like crazy with the virtual machines that we set up for the first Hacker Challenge. So I've realized, I'm not actually RAM limited in this case, it's really CPU, so it's time to throw some more CPUs at it. And the challenge for me to upgrade the Hacker Challenge is to create just as much, as big and badass of a cluster as I can for under $1,000. And let's see if I could do it. So here's what I've come up with. Using an ASUS board, this is the ASUS P, what is it? Well, anyway, it's that guy. It's the P94 or something. Anyway, where do they put those? They used to sell, the PBH67 TAC MLE. Whatever. Anyway, it was the least expensive motherboard I could find that would support the i3, i5, i7 chips. So picked up a couple of those. The 2400 seems to be a pretty good middle of the road i5 to play with, and let's see. So I got two 24s and a 2500K. Interesting part about the 2500K is that it's actually unlocked, so you can overclock it to your heart's content. For these purposes, I'm not really going to worry about that. I'm just going to, pop these in stock. And I'm just trying to make things as easy for myself as I can. That's so much easier than back when you used to have to use a screwdriver. God, I hated those days, right? So figured, hey, mostly CPU limited in these instances. This guy, quad core with 8 gigs, really didn't use all of his RAM, so I figured 4 cores, it's a quad core i5, 3.1 to 3.3 gigahertz per chip. So 8 gigs of RAM should be good enough there. We'll see. And yeah, I just went this with the stock cooler. I'm not looking for anything super crazy here. I think they should hold up. I don't know. We'll see in the weeks to come. One of the other things that I went ahead and did is, rather than using desktop hard drives, I just went with 7200 RPM laptop drives. It's going to make it a little lower profile, and you guys are going to see we've got some interesting things that we're doing with case modifications in the weeks to come that are going to be really spiffy. So in this case, I actually needed a 2.5-inch hard drive, $40 on special, so can't really go wrong there. So I don't know if what you guys do as far as building inexpensive boxes, but I say if there's one thing you can cheap out on, it's totally the case. So you may notice here that the case on the one node that I'm looking at is not necessarily the sexiest case you've ever seen. Actually, it's the case that comes with the motherboard. That's right. All motherboards come with cases. It's a big cardboard box, you know. You get your box cutter out and you're all good to go, right? So cut out a little bit for the power supply, area for the fan, your I/O on the back. Hey, I call it a day. That will work for right now until we get a little bit crazier here with the case modifications. But, you know, the challenge here is to build 3 i5 machines for under $1,000. And let's see how we did. Well, not so much. I tried, I really did. Maybe if I ordered online rather than going down to, like, you know, the local Fry's and Micro Center, I would have done a bit better. But for the most part, did about $1,200, so not too high over budget. And, you know, I really think that it was worth the little extra to get the better processor and, you know, to get ample amounts of RAM and stuff like that. But there we go. I think I just about finished building this computer. Okay, well, I'll get back to this guy a little later on in the show. I actually have one finished over here. So let's go ahead, boot him up, and add him to the cluster because, you know, our Proxmox machine, he wants some friends, man. He doesn't want to sit there all by his lonesome just serving up virtual machines. Okay, power switch. No, I didn't set up a power switch. What did I do? I set the BIOS so that he would just turn on when power resumes. This is plugged in, and it's plugged in over there. Why are we not getting any power? Okay. Let's see what we can do about this. Now, unlike having like a side panel to open, you know, you just break out your box cutter. Oh, you know what? Okay, nope, that's just a network light. Never mind. I see network lights, and I'm like, oh, it's really on, but no, it's not. Okay, so another fun thing you can do, if you haven't installed a power switch, I had set these up so that rather than actually setting up a power switch that would come with your case, since I'm not actually spending the extra money on a case. Oops, there it goes. Okay, actually it was on. Ooh, I just have a little power supply issue where the cable is running across my heatsink fan, causing it to stop. What did I do here? Darren, come on, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? I had it great on the, this one's running great. I'll clean up the cable management. We're building some case mods for these anyway. But I was going to show you that, you know, if you don't want to go ahead and spend the money on an actual switch, you just find the 2 pins on your motherboard, use anything metal, short them out. Machine comes to life. I like to enable the BIOS to go ahead and just resume power state on power failure, you know, power on. And there we go. So now we have our pizza box. Of course, it's a live demo, so it has to fail, right? Okay, our machine's online. Let me see if I can start pinging it. And while that's going, I'll give you a tour of the little Proxmox add-ons that we've done with this guy. So I'm pretty sure this is 10.73.31.3. No, that's not it. Maybe you're 5. We'll plug a monitor into him and see what he is. Maybe he's just not all the way up yet. I know I have some monitors around here somewhere, right? Yes? No? There we go. Ah, the fun of live to tape. So what's going to essentially happen here is when we add additional machines to the cluster, they're going to be, you know, independent to a certain extent. It's not like a single virtual machine is going to be using the resources of all of the machines across the network. Rather, it's just going to allow us to have a nicer administration interface so that we can see all of the machines in one console view so that we can, oh, keyboard error, press F1 to continue. Wow, really, Darren? You didn't disable the keyboard error on boot? Way to go. I was up late building 3 of these machines back to back, so anyway, just pop some USB loving in here and we should be all set to go. By the way, that's like one of my favorite errors, you know, keyboard error, F1 to continue. Yeah. So anyway, it's each of these are, let's see, discard changes and exit. Great. So this guy will boot up. Now, what I was saying was that each of these are individual Proxmox VE installations, just like we had done on episode 820, 821. And really, we're just going to add them so that they can talk to each other. All of the virtual machines are going to run on each of these individual boxes, but what it's going to allow us to do is migrate them as the CPU load changes on the different boxes. So say like we've got, you know, a bunch of servers that we're trying to attack on one machine, and then we've got like clients on the other, and maybe I need to move some resources around. It makes it really easy to say, okay, well, you know, cluster node number 4 isn't really doing much, but cluster node number 1 is like totally pegged out. So let's move one of those machines over there. And that's one of the neat things that it's going to allow us to do. So it's booted up. We basically just go ahead and get a text prompt here that tells us the IP address of our new server. So let me just ping that, make sure he's online. And there he is. So let's add him to the mix. All right. You don't need a monitor or a keyboard anymore. There we go. So I'm logged into Proxmox VE, the administration interface here on the first machine. Now I've decided to make the quad core, the first machine we built, the master of our cluster. And to do that, basically what we have to do is SSH into it, okay? So I'm going to just fire up some putty action here and head over to Proxmox 1, log in as root. And it takes a little while for it to even prompt me for password. So while that's going on, let's just talk about some of the benefits. And I probably should have talked about this at the very top, but some of the benefits of doing this. You know, it's a single password, a single login and password for all of the VMs, since we can control everything from our single master. This means that, you know, we get a single console to see all of them. Again, like I said, being able to migrate VMs between nodes. And yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And then later we'll talk about how we can actually add like an NFS server so we can do backups to that. All right, so password. Okay. So we're here, and if I do, there's a command PVECA for Proxmox Virtualized Environment VE. Proxmox VECA is for cluster administration. So if I do PVECA TAC L, it will give me a listing of my cluster. And you can see cluster ID number 1 is this machine that I'm logging into up here. It's 1073.31.2. Its role is M for master. Its state is A for active. It's been up for 2 days, and you know, it's just chilling. Well, we created him as the master by using TAC C, and we can check the status with TAC L. There's also a couple other things that we need to consider here. Most important is making sure that all of these have the proper date. By default, Proxmox is set up to get its date from NFS. So as long as they're on the same network, they all should, you know, supposedly get the same date. I'm going to log into the other server here. And that was .3. Yeah, we're going to accept those keys. Let's put these guys over here. All right. Now you can see here on Proxmox admin console that already I have 2 Proxmox hosts on my cluster. I see Proxmox and Proxmox 2. I can see their activity. I can click in here and see, oh, okay, this is a Core i5 2500K at 3.3 with 4 gigs of RAM. Go back here and see the other one. And when this is all said and done, we're going to have 4 nodes on our cluster, maybe even 5, depending on what we do with our previous wall-mounted server. All right, so I am logged into this new machine. He would like to join the cluster, so in that case, really, it's just a matter of checking out PVECA, TAC A for add to the cluster, and then TAC H, and then we give it the IP address of the master. So in that case, it's 1073.31.2. When we do that, we're going to say yes. It essentially SSHs over to that first machine. Now, if I go back over to the first one, we can actually check the configuration of our cluster. If I cat, or let's use less, /etc/pve/cluster.cfg, and you can see it's just got the RSA keys and the IP addresses and the names and all of that stuff for each of the nodes in our cluster. So we give it the password for the root account on the master. And the first time I ever did this, I did run into a little bit of an error where it was not syncing correctly, and it was because the date was wrong. So just run the date command and make sure that your time and date is identical between all of the nodes in your cluster. All right, cluster node successfully created. So if I come back up to here and do a PVECA TAC L, I can see, and this is the error that I got before. And that will actually, what was it? That was similar to the error I got before. Anyway, I got that, and it essentially was just because it was still in the process of syncing. If I come over here and hit home, I'll see that there it is, the no ticket, the invalid ticket error, right? I got that one before, and it was, I don't know, it just seems to be a quirk in 1.7. I did a lot of, form browsing to figure it out, and essentially it goes away after it finishes syncing. The other issue could be, of course, the date. That is how you add some more nodes to the cluster. We've got our second node here, our third node coming up, throwing some errors. I'll get that fixed for here. And then our fourth one being built. We're going to add in probably the wall-mounted server, and then we're going to do some really fun case mods, probably at the beginning of season 9. And yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think about this Proxmox stuff. I know that there's a lot of solutions out there, but this one is a really quick and easy way to get KVM and OpenVZ with a beautiful interface that clusters and does backups all built in just a matter of minutes. So hit me up, feedback@hak5.org, if you've got questions or comments about setting up clusters or other virtualization related stuff. And on that note, I want to go ahead and thank one of the sponsors that makes this all possible. And you guys know that I'm a huge fan of domain.com. They've been in business since 2000. They're your one-stop shop for domains. They've got, domain names, reliable Linux and Windows hosting. They've got virtual private servers. In fact, Hak5.org is even run on a virtual private server from domain.com. They've got affordable everyday pricing for .coms, just $9.95 a year. Private registration for $6.99 a year, and you can get their web hosting with a 99.99% network uptime track record, fast servers, world-class hosting infrastructure, and excellent customer support. Never had any problems getting anything going with them, and I want to thank them for not only hosting Hak5.org, but sponsoring the show and providing you guys with a way to save 15% on your order at domain.com. All you have to do, use coupon code HAK5. Save yourself some money next time you've got a great idea. You got to get that domain. You got to get that web hosting. They're your one-stop shop for that. So if you've got a great idea, it all starts with a great domain, domain.com. So I've gone ahead and fixed the date issue on our new nodes of the cluster. And if I, on the master SSH, do a PVE CA TAC L, you can actually see there's all three of my machines. They are M for master, N for nodes, and I can see the states are A for active and S for syncing. If I come over here to the web interface, I can see it. It's actually saying no sync. It's in the process of syncing. If I wanted to manually, I could come over here to that new machine and do PVECA TAC S for sync, TAC H, and then 10.73.31.2, the IP address of the master. I'm just going to let this guy sync. It might take a little while. But let me show you what it would be like to migrate some machines once you have a new machine or a new host on the network. So over in virtual machines, I can see here is the cluster node for Proxmox, and I've got a bunch of VMs here. And then cluster node Proxmox 2, you want to make sure that all of these machines are default installs of Proxmox, but you do need to keep in mind that their host names cannot be identical. You run into some problems here. So this one node Proxmox 2, I can see I have a VM on that waiting to go. Let's go ahead and start that one up. And while that's starting, let's move another one. So virtual machines, I can see I have this, oh, this isn't very big. It's, I think this one's a Linux machine. It's 12 gigabytes in size. And what I can do is come over to the Migrate tab. And then I choose my source, which is my first Proxmox machine, my target, which is the second one, node 2 in the cluster. Then I'm going to just come down here and select VM ID number 301, that Linux box I created, and click Migrate. And that will go ahead and start the migrating process. I can leave this tab. That's going to all go. And yeah, there's not much more to it. You know, when I go back over to my list, eventually that will make its way over into that part of the cluster. When this guy finishes syncing, I'll be able to move all sorts of stuff around. It'll be great, you know. So I think our other machine is all up and running. So let's open that VNC console. And there we go. I'm freshly booted into one of our Windows XP Service Pack 2 boxes, and I'm greeted with this Found New Hardware wizard. And why is that? Well, we talked about setting up Windows machines and how that we need to use KVM rather than OpenVZ for the full virtualization there. And if I go into the hardware tab of this machine, I can see that my Ethernet controller right here is VirtIO or Virtio, or however you want to pronounce that. I can actually create another Ethernet device, for instance, and I have plenty of models to choose from, like a RTL 8139. That's a Realtek chipset. There's plenty of different ones that I can choose from. But the reason I want to use VirtIO for my Windows machines is that since it is a KVM machine, since it's a Windows machine, VirtIO is going to have better performance, and that's because it is a para-virtualized device driver, okay? And I guess I should explain that VirtIO is basically an abstraction layer that allows your devices in a para-virtualized hypervisor to run. So let's probably break that down, because that may have sounded like Greek. An abstraction layer, the HAL or the hardware abstraction layer has been with us, at least on the Windows side, since NT. And essentially what that is just basically a layer of software that says, oh, okay, you want to have the modem dial this number so you can send this command, right? But every modem has like different commands and different ways to talk to it to send those commands. But when you're writing software, say like you're writing a modem dialer, you don't want to have to include every single way that you could possibly dial a number for all of the different models of modems and all of that stuff. And that abstraction layer is just a piece of software that sits in between, and you can just talk to it, and it will, do the rest between the different, whether it's this video card or that video card and all that stuff. So that's basically the idea of an abstraction layer. The devices obviously are the hardware, and para-virtualized basically means, the difference between para-virtualization and full virtualization is, say for instance, full virtualization, we've got a Linux server, piece of hardware, and we just want to go ahead and download that into a file, move it over to our virtualization environment, and bring it up as a virtual machine without ever having to change the configuration of the Linux machine. That would be a fully hosted, a full virtualization type of scenario. And then there's para-virtualized, which if you're using, say, VMware or VirtualBox on your desktop, you're probably used to having VMware tools or the guest add-ons for VirtualBox. Those are special drivers, specifically for Ethernet and your video card, that give them better performance, so that when you're using them on your desktop, they look a lot nicer. Otherwise, they just use anyway. It's just not as fast, right? So para-virtualized basically just means adding a little piece of software to your new guest machine so that it can run with better performance. And while we could use any of these other models here in our dropdown, the VirtIO has the best performance because it's a para-virtualized driver for our hypervisor, which is just a fancy word for our virtualization environment, in this case Proxmox or VMware or VirtualBox or whatever you like to use. So how do you get the drivers onto a virtual machine here for the network card when you don't have network access? Well, in that case, just like we see here in the hardware, we actually have mounted an ISO, and this is netkvm.iso. I've actually done a tiny URL for you guys, tinyurl.com/virtio-iso, and that should take you to a site where you can download just a CD image that has the VirtIO drivers for Windows or whatever your operating system may be. So in this case, it's really just a matter of saying, yeah, sure, go ahead and install that from the CD-ROM, and there we go. We now have Ethernet, and we're online. We has tubes. Hooray! All right, so I hope that was insightful. I hope I didn't just make that even more confusing. But yeah, that's what's going on. That's my project for this week. We're going to be doing a lot more with these servers. As you guys know, with the Hacker Challenge, I hope you guys will get in on that. The next one I think is scheduled for February 13th. So head over to hak5.org/challenge to find all about that and how you can get involved and watch the live stream and get on the IRC. And yeah, just pwnage everywhere. It's just going to be so much fun. As well as, putting these servers into something a little nicer than a cardboard box. I think they deserve a little bit more, and we've got some fun stuff for that coming up here soon. So before we get going, we are going to check in with Shannon. We're going to wrap all of this up, but I do want to thank our last sponsor. Thank you very much.
Isaac Clarke returns for another blood-curdling adventure in the sequel to Visceral Games' critically acclaimed blockbuster Dead Space. After waking from a coma on a massive space city known as the Sprawl, the lone survivor of a horrific alien infestation finds himself confronting a catastrophic new nightmare. Equipped with a new arsenal of tools to dismember the necromorphs, Isaac will face the challenge head-on. Fire up Isaac's suit boosters to rocket around in zero gravity like never before. Explore the depths of the Sprawl and encounter new weightless combat and physics-based puzzles with full 360 degrees movement. For the first time, experience the horror of a necromorph outbreak with others. Fight in skirmishes around the Sprawl and strategically dismember your friends in online multiplayer gameplay. Dead Space 2 is in stores now. Charity Water and Revision 3 have partnered up to bring clean water to communities in need. $5,000 builds a well that can help 50 families. Help us raise donations at revision3.com/charitywater. Every dollar counts. And as usual, if you guys have the Technolust like Freebriel with his wall of fans for his server, way cool, show your pride by sending us photos over to feedback@hak5.org. And remember, you can support the show free and easy by subscribing on iTunes and YouTube. Just go over to hak5.org/subscribe to find all the details. And if you want to support the show with a little bit out of your wallet, you can go over to hak5.org/store. We just restocked all of our Hak5 t-shirts, so make sure to grab those while they are in stock. And last but not least, remember to trust your Technolust. Until next week, I am Shannon Morse.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen and I'm holding a knife. Why am I holding a knife? Because you run faster with a knife, that's right. Wow. Did anything more fail in this demo? Are you sunk yet? Synctified? Sinkiness? Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is, I'm still holding a knife. F-disk format reinstall, doo-da, doo-da. F-disk format reinstall, oh, doo-da,